we hear people talking about Semen, they say one number for motility. How do we know if that's total or progressive? And what does that mean for us? What's the important number to know?
Really important number is progressive motility. Total motility, you could have a sample that has a very high total motility. This one doesn't happen to have very many cells like that. But none of them are progressive, meaning you can have 70% total motility, but most of the cells are going in a circle. So what does it mean when a cell is moving progressively versus non-progressively? It really is just a measure of how relatively healthy that cell is, and maybe also gives you a clue as to what its morphology is. But sperm that are ejaculated, that are not capacitated, not in preparation of fertilization, should be moving in a linear fashion. If you have a high percentage of freshly ejaculated sperm that are going in circles or have very erratic movement, it's an indication that they may be prematurely undergoing capacitation. Capacitation is a process that occurs, it's supposed to occur, it's normal, but it's supposed to occur in the female reproduction tract. It's not supposed to occur in a straw or on a slide or in a pooled semen dose. So if you have a high percentage of those circling or hyperactivated type sperm, it indicates either some damage from the cryopreservation process or premature capacitation, maybe during cooling or in the handling of that cell. One thing to point out is that these CASA systems, even though they're objective, can be influenced by how certain parameters are set up on the instrument. If you scan for a fewer number of video frames, the tracks are going to be shorter, and a sperm that is over time going to go in a circle, if you only look at it for an eighth of a second, its little track is going to be pretty straight. So it's critical when you see data from an analysis, it's even if somebody says, well, this was done on CASA and this one was done on CASA, they may be two different manufacturings, two different types of software, and two different definitions of what parameters were used to do that analysis. So it's important to know how many frames were analyzed, what the framing rate was, and most importantly, if progressive motility is the criteria that's being used, what's the definition for progressive motility? As I said before, ours is a cutoff of 50 microns per second for path velocity and 75% straightness ratio. If another lab said, and these settings can be altered by the user, said we're going to set the bar a little lower for a progressive remotal sperm and say the velocity only has to be 30 microns per second and the straightness only has to be 50%. Well, then we could be analyzing the exact same sample on this system, and that system will report a much, much higher progressive motility because the definition is less strict.
And is there a recommendation from the CASA system company itself on those settings, or is that totally up to each lab?
There is a recommendation, and at least for this company that makes these systems that we use, that is a recommendation that they give with the system when they sell a system, but it's not hardwired, and it allows the user to change that parameter as well as a lot of other parameters. So the caution is just because it's a CASA system doesn't mean that you can compare the data from one CASA system to another, even the same manufacturer, because one lab may adjust things differently than another lab. So the important thing is to know if you do have CASA data, well, how is that defined? Particularly progressive motility, how is that defined?